Broncos announced they have notified quarterback Russell Wilson that he will be released after the league year begins on March 13th. In a joint statement from GM George Paton and head coach Sean Payton, they said, quote, "We thank Russell for his contributions and dedication to our team and community while wishing him the best as he continues his career." And just moments ago, Wilson posted his goodbye to Broncos country. He thanked the fans for welcoming his family with open arms, his teammates for their battles shared together, and many others that have helped him in Denver over the past couple of years. He also ended with this statement, quote, "Tough times don't last, but tough people do. God's got me. I'm excited for what's next." Let's talk about it, you guys. We start with Dan Orlovsky. Actually, we start with Adam here. What's the latest, Adam, on how this all came down? It's not that it wasn't expected, but still fascinating to see where this goes from here.
No surprise here, Laura. There were organizational meetings today in Denver, and Sean Payton spoke with Russell Wilson a short time ago and informed him of the team's decision. And now where it gets interesting is what's next for Russell Wilson and what's next for the Denver Broncos. Let's start with Russell Wilson. He's coming off a year in which he threw 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and he believes he's still primed to play some of the better football of his career. He becomes a free agent, but what makes him so attractive now is this. The Denver Broncos will release him. So any team that is interested in signing him will not have to compensate the Broncos with any draft picks or players, unlike any team that might want to trade for Justin Fields. Not only that, but the Denver Broncos will be paying Russell Wilson $39 million this year. So any team that signs Russell Wilson will get him at a highly friendly team rate where they have to pay very little, if any, money at all. So that gives Russell Wilson a huge advantage over other teams. And I think there's a feeling around the league with some that obviously he struggled under Nathaniel Hackett. And because of that 1 year where he struggled and he bounced back some last year before being benched, that he will have some suitors in free agency. As for the Broncos, they have Jarrett Stidham. They'll start there. They'll explore other options. Wouldn't surprise anybody if Sean Payton identified somebody in the draft and drafted a young quarterback as well. But Russell Wilson's going in one direction. The Broncos are going in another, and we'll see where they both wind up.
So, Dan, let's start with the direction that Russell Wilson's going. What do you think it looks like for him as you look across the NFL? There are some quarterback-needy teams.
It's a long road, patience, time. No one's going to jump at Russell right now. And I understand Schefter's point of the contract. The real question is Russell Wilson almost comfortable being a fringe competing starter or backup? Because he's going to be very cheap. But we have to be honest about the situations that are going to be available to him. Now, it's funny because Baker Mayfield's going to get a ton of money, and he earned that. Their numbers are relatively similar off of last season, and Baker obviously had Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, much better talent to throw on a consistent basis. But if you look at the teams, New England drafting number 3, probably going to take a quarterback, or at some point, Pittsburgh doesn't seem like they're going to jump. Tennessee, moving forward, Will Levis, the Giants maybe, but then that's again a competing starting quarterback position. Maybe Washington, but I would imagine they draft somebody at 2, so there's just not a lot of seats going to be available for Russell.
Not a lot of seats at the outset, Dan. But let's keep this in mind. Kirk Cousins is going to choose a team, and he can't go to multiple teams. He's only going to one. So let's just say he goes to Minnesota or Atlanta. The other one that doesn't get him could wind up taking a look at Russell Wilson. You mentioned Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has Kenny Pickett on its roster. Again, they're looking for a cheap alternative to challenge and possibly unseat Kenny Pickett. He would make sense there. How about Las Vegas in the division where he doesn't cost a lot and can come in and can compete with Aiden O'Connell? Again, you may be thinking of Russell Wilson from 2 seasons ago, but I urge you to think of Russell Wilson without having to compensate the Broncos, without having to compensate him, and basically getting a free tryout for a quarterback who's got a decorated past.
The contract is everything here to me, to Adam's point, because it opens up such a different range of possibilities. If he was competing with Kirk Cousins or heck, even Baker, we'll see how much money he gets. I think that would be very limiting. But because he is likely willing to take a lot less, suddenly you're looking at teams that are not picking near the top of the draft and maybe don't have a ton of cap space. Or, Adam, potentially teams that are going to draft a quarterback, say a J.J. McCarthy or maybe even a Drake May if they want him to sit. because Russell Wilson is potentially asking for so little money, you could draft a quarterback and bring him in as the bridge, and it would make complete sense in terms of like having a two-track system in place for your quarterback.
Sure.
So, he does himself a lot of favors, or rather opens up a lot of possibilities if he's willing to take less money. And as Adam laid out, he certainly has the resources to do so.
MK, that's the huge part for me. The last thing you say, if he's willing. I don't know if Russell is. I'm Team Russell. I believe Russell outplayed the narrative around him this year. But he's got to be willing to step in a completely different role of, again, hey, we're going to draft this young player and you're going to play for cheap and you're more than likely going to be our guy for 1 year. And Schefter, you may know more about his mindset than obviously we do. The second thing is that organization also needs to be willing and capable of taking on the noise that is going to come with Russell Wilson. I'm not saying it's negative noise, but we know there's a lot of conversation around him. That organization needs to be willing to accept that also.
He thinks he's going to go in and take a team to a Super Bowl next year. He doesn't think that there's going to be a quarterback that's going to beat him out. He thinks he's going wherever he's going, and he's going to win the starting job. He believes in himself. He'll bet on himself. And again, whereas you're going to have to give up draft picks to Chicago for Justin Fields, whereas you're going to have to pay Kirk Cousins, one of the higher paid contracts in the league right now for a free agent, $45, $50 million a year, you don't have to compensate the Broncos. You don't really have to compensate Russell Wilson. All you have to give him is a chance, which brings him into the conversation in any number of places. You talk about his mindset. His mindset is not the way that you're thinking. His mindset is, I'm ready to go win and show people that I am the type of quarterback that I know I am. Now, it's up to another team to give him that opportunity. But somebody's going to strike out on Kirk Cousins. Somebody's not going to land Justin Fields. Somebody's going to be sitting there in the end saying, why would we not take a gamble, a roll the dice, a dart throw on a guy who cost us nothing? And because of all those elements, I believe he comes into play in more places than people think because of all the elements surrounding his particular situation.
Yeah, Broncos will now have an $85 million dead cap hit after Wilson's release. That's the largest in league history, in case you were wondering. Dan, I want to look to the draft a little bit because, you know, the top three quarterbacks in Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jaden Daniels, however you look at it, and then you've got J.J. McCarthy, you've got other players out there, Bo Nix, whoever you want to throw in, Michael Penix. The Broncos picked 12th overall. Do you feel like they'd be in position? Maybe Sean Payton gets excited. I saw him at the Combine. Do they try to go up and get somebody? Does that make sense right now to you?
I think, number one, they'll have to try and get up. But there's going to be that group of teams, 11, 12, 13, 14, them being in that mix, that is going to try to get up. I don't know if they'll be able to get into the top three for one of the big three at least. I do know this. Sean Payton has a type. And if they can't get one of those top three, I firmly look at Bo Nix out of Oregon and J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan as two guys that certainly fit that type when it comes to Sean Payton-style quarterbacks. Yeah, they might be, correct.
Mina.
Yeah, those two quarterbacks do make sense for me. I don't know if both of them make sense where they're picking at 12 necessarily, but in terms of the offense that Payton wants to run, offense that's very predicated based on the personnel they have in Denver on running the football. Those are two quarterbacks who are good throwing over the middle of the field, accurate, can throw on the move, have athleticism, makes a lot of sense. But to Dan's point, what he said at the beginning, you got to consider or try to move up into the top three if you love one of those quarterbacks, even though it would take the sort of haul that San Francisco had to give up to move up to three a few years ago.
I don't know that Sean Payton would be of the mind to want to move up in the draft. And we're talking about Russell Wilson believing in his abilities wherever he goes. Well, I think Sean Payton believes in his abilities to analyze quarterbacks and to find and identify a quarterback that he believes will fit in Denver and have the chance to grow to become the type of starter that he's looking for in Denver. And let's also start out with the fact that I think that he likes Jarrett Stidham an awful lot. And he gave Stidham a 2-year contract last year, so they have Stidham under a very starter-friendly price tag for this year should he win that job. But then Sean Payton could go out and add somebody through the draft. He can go out and add some sort of overlooked veteran quarterback and I believe that he thinks that he will find the right solution to succeed Russell Wilson in Denver.